Love and Relo, the voice of the relocation industry, and I am your host, Ben Cross, and I am joined halfway around the globe by Adam McWhirter. How are you, Adam?
I'm great. Thanks for having me, Ben.
Thanks for getting up so early and putting on a jacket for us. I appreciate it. Yeah, it's
Well,
yeah.
uh,
This is 7:30 Eastern PM here in the U.S. and it's 7:30. Is it 7:30 a.m. in
yeah, 12
China?
hours. So, yeah.
So where in the world for our viewers? Where in the world are you right now?
Shanghai at home,
Shanghai
basically.
at
Yeah.
home. Beautiful
Yeah.
architecture back there as well. Gorgeous.
Yeah, there's a lot of, obviously a lot of old architecture in Shanghai. So I'm in something called the French Concession. So that's, I don't know how to, it's an older neighborhood in Shanghai that's kind of been maintained and restored. So there's a lot of high rises in the area, don't get me wrong, but they've kept a lot of the old villas and charm. So uh,
See,
I'm
I didn't
on
even
the
know that
third
there
floor
was
of
a.
a villa.
Yeah, I mean, and we could talk about all the things that American people don't know about China, but I didn't realize that there was an old neighborhood. I was under the impression, I mean, get, granted, China's very old, but I didn't. I thought everything was new. I thought everything was new build and very um, flashy and new.
I could go 3-4 miles away from here, 5 kilometers ish, and I can show you everything new and brand new and flashy.
Yeah,
But I mean, obviously, China has a lot of history, and I don't, we don't need to get too much into the history. I
I
don't
know
think on
we could
this
spend
chat,
more than an hour
but
talking about Chinese history,
yeah,
right?
yeah. But there was a period 100 years ish ago with a lot of colonial powers in China, and so the French had there was a French concession and there was a British concession, but the French concession was maintained. So it's kind of a trendy, I don't want to say hipster yuppie area, but like there's a reason there's big trees and it has like just a nicer, less cement skyrise feeling to it than other parts of Shanghai. So yeah, so that's where I am.
Very cool. Very cool. And if you're watching right now on LinkedIn, go ahead and leave a comment so we can give you a shout out and recognize you. Let your voice be heard there. If you've got a question for Adam, who is in China right now, when he's going to talk to us about common misperceptions around China from outside China. He's going to talk about what's it like being in China for COVID, going through COVID-19. He's got offices in Wuhan and other places, so lots of really cool insights coming to us as well. So go ahead and check in, and I'm seeing a few people checking in here. Um, Dad, gotta love Dad. Again, checking in. Good to hear. He says, "Good to hear Wuhan is up and running again."
Hmm.
How? Let me ask. I'll go right into it and ask the
Yeah,
elephant in the room. How long was Wuhan down as the epicenter of COVID-19? How long was it down?
I believe it was January 23rd or 22nd. I can't remember. I think it was like 23rd and midnight or something.
Yeah.
That basically they shut the doors on Wuhan. Within a few days to a week, other cities in the province and eventually the whole province of Hubei, 60-ish million. I can't remember, 60, 65 million, whatever it is, but 60-ish million people was just on lockdown. So I think it ended up being 78 days total, 77 somewhere in there, and because it just opened 5 or 6 days ago. So
Wow.
um, yeah,
What was that like opening? Like after being quarantined for 77 days or whatever, two and a
yeah,
half months. Because here we are in the states, right? So we're here in the states. Just you probably know this, but
hmm,
Michigan. I'm in Michigan right now, and I think our shelter in place order was probably handed down 3 weeks ago ish. So we're getting into the groove of it right now. I mean, we'd love to go out, but we're okay. We're managing. But I mean,
hmm,
you're talking about a time period that's 4 or 5 times longer than that. What was that like when you
yeah.
were told like, "Hey, we can go out again"?
Well, so I was in Shanghai, so it's different. Like everyone says China, well, you just can't say America, right? Every
Right.
city is different, different regulations, and
Yep.
depending on where you go. So in Shanghai, we only had really 1 week of everything being closed and really shut down. I shouldn't. That's there's Chinese New Year. Everything's closed then anyway. So that's like the Christmas week. So there's a lot that's closed then anyway. That was last week of January. And then there was first week of February where it was kind of like, wow, okay, what's going on? Is it contained? You're just like you guys, you're getting up and checking the numbers every day. Social media information overload, and that doesn't help with the psychology of things. I think you mentioned I had our podcast, but we had the psychologist from Lifeline on. So Shanghai Lifeline is a call-in center, and so she was, just really discussing the psychology of isolation and whatnot. So we went through in Shanghai. We went through probably similar to what you're going through now in Michigan, and because that you can still leave, you can still go to the grocery store.
Yeah, and go to the grocery store. Right.
Now, yeah. You can still go for a walk. You're not going to walk in groups, but you're still. So in Shanghai, I have a dog. I'm sleeping right now, but I would walk him twice a day, like go for long walks. So I never had that stay at home issue. Where in Wuhan, that was different. So in Wuhan, I have 5 staff, and basically it was really quick. So the week of January 13th. My manager, she manages all my business outside of Shanghai. She's based in Wuhan. She was here that week, January 13th to 17th, and it was normal. And that weekend, the 19th, 20th, she went back. That's when things were escalating a little bit. I flew to another city, and so if you look at Wuhan, it's basically the middle of China, literally the middle of China. And I flew to a city in Chongqing a city called Chongqing in southwest China. That Monday, the 20th or 21st, I believe. No, I flew on Sunday. Anyway, the 21st, I had a meeting. That was Monday. And basically on the 22nd, things just went, and I had to fly back. And there was no masks. I didn't want to get on the airplane. That's when things were really starting to panic. So in 1 week, and again, it's very similar to Europe, very similar to North America. There was 1 week where you heard about it, and then it was like someone flipped a switch of like, I guess that is what a pandemic is. So, but on the 23rd, which was again, I could be getting the dates slightly off, but on the 23rd, which is the Thursday, that's when Wuhan closed. So the Thursday before that, my Wuhan manager was with me. We were out having wine and making our yearly plans. A week later, Wuhan shut. And so in Wuhan, at first they were allowed to go to the grocery store. And then after a week or so, it was no grocery stores. Everybody stays at home. If you had a dog, you were allowed to just walk your dog, literally just in front of the building. And then you're back in, just for a quick pee and then back in.
That was so early too. So we didn't know about really how it was spread, and was it airborne? Was it, droplets of, of respiration? We didn't know so much. So, I mean, here we're like, hey, as long as we're 6 feet away, maybe 8, we should be okay. And, we kind of have more ground rules. I mean, but you guys were really at the tip of the spear figuring this thing out as you go. And, I want to hear more about this. I want to acknowledge some people that are checking in here real quick too. Josh Rose, Adam and Ben, you've bridged the great firewall. That's funny because we're still struggling with the Wi-Fi a little bit here. Brian Rothschild in KC at home. Hello to both of you gentlemen. Hi, Brian. Hosea Botley. Hello, guys from Seattle. Hey, Hosea. Kelly Gurn. What's up, Ben? Checking in from Arizona. Kelly at Shift. Hey, Kelly. Elena Anderson DeLay. Hi, Adam and Ben. Greetings from Maryland. So we have folks from all over here. Let's see. Claude LeBlanc. Big Chinese cover up here. I don't even know. Is that serious or not? Maybe. I don't know. Francois Xavier Grolot. Hello from Kuala Lumpur. Awesome. So we're reaching some of the Asian markets right now because we're doing this later. I love it. Brian Smith. Good evening, morning from St. Louis. Jake Lowry. How are the Okay, very interesting. Here's okay, we have a question here. So and this is kind of on the topic. So we'll take this one. Jake Lowry says, how are the Chinese portraying the outbreak here in the U.S. to their people? What do the news stations say about the rest of the world and their outbreaks?
Well, I mean, I've been here for quite some time, but I definitely don't read Chinese news. So it's more of the sentiment on friends it can give you the feeling. I mean, there's definite empathy because obviously we went through it. Um, I know a lot of people that are, you know, again, as I don't want to get too political or anything, but there was a lot of the world was supporting China with masks and PPE and at the beginning, and as it went abroad and as it spread to Italy and throughout the world, well, that changed. So China began again sending things abroad, but just like anything, when there's money to be made, there's a lot of factories that suddenly flipped and started making masks, and so the government did have to put in a lot more regulations on safety standards and quality and what can be exported. And it's not a matter of not wanting to export. It's just everything has to meet the certain standards. And there's the CE and the NOISE, NOISE, I think NOISE standards. So there's a lot of FDA and blah 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 blah, like all those standards per region. So for the most part, though, I mean, on the abroad situation, I think there's a lot of understanding within the general Chinese community on, doing what they can. If they 99% of people aren't able to do anything anyway, just like you weren't able to help here,
Right.
but the ones that are able to help do and will.
Yeah, I've seen some news stories about China actually starting to export some of their equipment and things like that can be used over here and in other areas as well. Yeah, I mean, you can't expect Chinese factories to be operational when, I mean, I think at the time there might have been a not understanding of it, but now that here we are sheltering in place and not being able to go to work ourselves and having production issues ourselves with things like ventilators and masks and PPE and things like that. I think it's easier to relate to. It's funny to see the way, and just culturally, because culture does play into relocation and being an expat and things like
Yeah.
that. When it's somebody else's problem, it's very easy to judge. But then when it comes over to our home and it's our problem, and now we are struggling with the same things and we can't figure it out. We pride ourselves on being this, incredible industrial power, whatever, it's like, but we can't figure it out either. The narrative changes quite a bit, and I think it's moments like these. One of the great little silver linings that I've seen in this pandemic is, I think, as a world, it's made us more empathetic, I think, to other countries, and made us connect, because we see people in Italy who are dying, but then we see people here in the United States that are dying, and in China, etc. And so my hope is that we can understand one another better, because we're afflicted by the same common affliction. Um,
Mm-hmm.
we'll see, right?
Yeah. Well, in a way,
Yeah, go ahead.
in a way, you mentioned that the empathy and the understanding, I think, and I don't know how to put this eloquently, that I'm not trying to sound like a psychologist or anything, but I find, it's definitely world changing. It's going to change the dynamics of communication. If you look at how, my mom has craft groups on Zoom now, because I mean, like, mom, you're using Zoom. Um,
My mom had a
but
Zoom meeting also on Easter. She hosted a
yeah,
family Zoom meeting, and I'm like, what are you talking about?
yeah, yeah. But in a way, it's bringing people closer together. I have partners that, like, global partners, whether it's an RMC or a survey firm. Like, I talk to them more now. There's more connection. And as strange as it sounds, I mean, my staff, I haven't seen them for 2.5 months. We're all connecting. Like, I have staff throughout China anyway, so it's quite common for me not to see my staff every day.
Right.
But we're closer now as a group than we were before,
Yeah.
because in the early days it was, hey, like, we had a Wuhan team and we're all checking in and, like, hey, how are you guys doing? And like, there's just, the connection is stronger because of this. So I would like to think that we're going to be a better connected, more empathetic world after this, and closer together. But maybe that's a big sweeping statement, that
No, I
it's a
think
wish. It's a
yeah,
hope.
it's a well, and that's the beginning, I think, of all great, changes is hopes and dreams, right? I mean, I had 2 phone calls with people I had never talked to on the phone before, and I had 2 2 video conferences with people I had never videoed with before, today. So I think that
Mhm.
you're right. I think that people are seeking community, and I think that we're valuing community, and I think we're valuing our workspaces and our offices and our camaraderie in the offices more now than ever.
Mhm.
So yeah, I think that's a great hope. Let's see, we got a few other people checking in here. Jeffrey Horn, very interesting to hear this. Thanks, Jeff. Uh, Francois says, yes, guys, timing works for me this morning. Thanks from Kuala Lumpur. And let's see, Josh Rose said, did one of those too, Ben, Zoom Easter party with the family from all over the world. So I want to ask you, Adam, I don't pick up a Chinese accent. So that leads me to believe you are not originally from China. Where are you from originally, and how did you end up in China?
I'm originally from Edmonton. Did you can still hear me?
I got you. Yep.
Okay, my
Yep.
video cut for a sec. Cool. Um, yeah, so I'm originally from Edmonton, Canada, Alberta. I grew up
Okay.
on a farm outside of Edmonton. Yeah, like a small town of 3,000 people, basically.
Nice. So you're going from 3,000 person farm town to
Yeah,
Shanghai, which has how many people?
depends where you draw the line, but roughly 25 million.
Which dwarfs our biggest. So our biggest city, New York, probably has 8 to 12 million, depending on where you draw the line, right? I mean, doubles
Yeah,
New York City.
yeah,
Incredible.
yeah,
What brought you from Canada? I have to ask. I mean, because as a person that's
yeah,
always wanted to, as a person that's always wanted to travel abroad to other continents, which I have not done yet, I'm ashamed to say,
yeah.
and always wanted to work abroad in other continents. China is probably one of the top of my list of places I would be scared to death to go and try to establish myself, a career.
Mhm.
What brought you to China? And I want to talk a little bit about what you've learned since coming over.
Well, that's a big question, but I'll go up until
Hey, I've got an hour
Maxxelli.
to fill,
So,
Adam, okay? So I'm going to ask you some real big ones, and you just take a swing, all right? And we'll see what happens.
all right. So, summer, basically in 2001, I was dating a girl who moved to Taiwan to teach English.
It always
And
starts, there's
through,
always a girl
yeah,
it's just,
yeah,
it's casual, and then all of a sudden you're in Taiwan, you know?
that's pretty much it. Yeah. So I told my parents I was 22 or actually I was 21. I was 22 when I moved, but I told my parents, hey, I'm moving to Taiwan and teach English. Like, the hell are you doing teaching English? You're not a teacher. But
You don't even speak well. What are you doing?
yeah, exactly. But I was, I'd been done some university, worked in restaurants, and I wasn't sure what I wanted to do. And I'm like, it's kind of like that's supposed to be 1 year of travel.
Yep.
So I moved to Taiwan, reading my Lonely Planet book on the way there. Knew nothing about Taiwan, China, like zero. So basically, lived in Taiwan for 3 years. That relationship ended along the way, and I knew that I wanted to be in Asia, but not as an English teacher. So I wasn't a
Let me stop you. Let me stop you. Did you have a
yeah,
fascination with Asian culture before you went over? Or was it something you just
no.
picked up? Okay. All right.
I chased a girl. Yeah. Uh,
Yeah.
um, so basically, I kind of got used to living in Taiwan, Asian life. I did obviously some traveling in those first 3 years, but being an English teacher, so I wasn't a, formal teacher. It was an English teacher, so it was kind of wasn't. The qualification is that I spoke English. That was pretty much it, and I played with
You
kids all
spoke
day.
English and these
So
20 people do not. That is your qualification.
pretty much, yeah, yeah. So I went back home for 2 years, 2005 to 2007, and I took a program, or I finished my studies, and I took a program called Asian Pacific Management. And it was by chance that I ended up in China because I was actually supposed to go to Thailand. But in
Hmm.
summer of 2007, there's a bit of unrest in Bangkok, which was common in that time. And so my university wouldn't send me there.
Hmm.
And so I had an opportunity to go to Chongqing. Um, so Chongqing at the time was the fastest growing city in the world, um, roughly 32 million people. Again, it's one city with big suburb cities. So like city plus suburbs
Yeah.
is 32 million.
Incredible.
Um, and I worked at a restaurant there for 6 months, and that's when I met my business partner. And I figured, as Chongqing, this was Q1 2018, so I figured I'm in the fastest growing city in the world. As Chongqing grows, so is this company. And then in 2000 May that year, there's a big earthquake in Chengdu. Summer 2008, there was Chengdu is the next city over, so again, southwest China. And then the global financial crisis hit. So, you know, when I opened my office.
Okay, that's what I was going to ask you. So global financial
Yeah.
crisis hits in '08, and you decide to do what?
Well, that's when I opened my office, was June 2008.
Okay.
Obviously, nothing was necessarily planned, and so I opened our third office at the time. So we had Chengdu, which is southwest China. We had a city called Suzhou, which is a suburb of Shanghai. It's half an hour away by train, 23 minutes by high-speed train or something. And then I opened office number 3 in Chongqing, which again is southwest China. So,
okay.
And then all of a sudden there's nobody moving for the first year. So it was that's what I opened to.
And your office, the name of your company, is this your current company now that you're talking about?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, so that's Maxxelli Mobility.
Yeah.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Can you tell people really quickly what Maxxelli Mobility does?
Yeah, so we originally called ourselves Maxxelli Real Estate, not knowing what a DSP was. We didn't figure out what a DSP was until probably, I don't know, 3 or 4 years later. So we started helping foreigners, working either directly with the companies themselves or working within the RMCs, the RMC world. So pretty much what we started as a DSP, but in China, the DSPs are also real estate based.
Right.
So we would do, the initiation, city orientations, pre-trip, home search, lease negotiation, move-in, settling in, tenancy management, renewal, departure. So kind of from when the assignee arrives in Shanghai or whatever city to the day they leave. And, we kind of developed along the way. So we work with almost every RMC out there. We have a pretty robust network on supporting partners globally, because that's obviously how we developed and how we learned. Over the years, we kind of grew, we expanded in residential. We do some property sales. We are working and helping a lot of expats, foreigners, buy properties in China. I have a new project again in Chongqing. We're doing on-site leasing for a very large project, and so there's it's called Raffle City. So it's a large. I'll send you some photos, Ben. But if you look up Raffle City Chongqing, and you're gonna like, whoa! It's 8 towers. And
oh wow!
Yeah, it's a big project. I'll send you a photo later. Anyway, so we're doing on-site leasing. So basically, anyone walks in, we're kind of the management office, whether you're local or foreign or whoever.
Okay.
So we'll be managing 5 different towers. And then we have a consulting division, and this is something that was sort of on the back burner for 2020, but things change. And so our consulting division is market research. So we do market research for a bunch of different companies, different industries. We do what's called a WOFE, wholly foreign owned enterprise. So the business license that you get as a foreign company. So we can do WOFE registration. We can also do WOFE deregistration. And so we're obviously, with what's happening globally right now, there's a lot of changing dynamics of different companies. And so we're doing more deregistrations, helping companies close their...
We got questions about that. So actually, that's a great segue. 2 questions here.
Yeah.
Checking in on Facebook really quick. Jason Rollins, Express Corporate Housing, checking in. Appreciate you, Jason. Ryan Beal, new district manager for Manatee County EMT. Not district manager, district chief, should say. Brian Rivers, sup, Ben and Adam from Cali. Awesome. I love when people check in on LinkedIn and they have like this headshot, and then they check in on Facebook, and I think he's going to eat that fish. I don't know. So we'll it's just fun. So question from Janet. First question relating to what you're talking about is Adam's business partner, Chinese, American, Canadian. She goes on to list all the countries. But where's
did she list Dutch?
She did not. Janet, you missed Dutch.
Yeah. Business partners are Dutch.
Oh, okay. Very cool. All right.
Yeah.
Cool, cool. And then, is it difficult for a foreigner to purchase real estate in China? I have heard there's restrictions
It,
and limitations on real estate and who can purchase how
yeah.
much.
Yeah. So in the early 2010s, there was obviously large inflation on the property markets, and there were a lot of Hong Kong, Singaporean, Taiwanese investors, of Western investors as well, that were coming over and buying properties, and so the government did put restrictions on it. Uh, Basically, is you have to be working in the city for a year, so you have your work visa. So once you're working for a year, you can purchase, and then uh, for the another simple restriction is the bank loan is you 50%. So you have to have a 50% down payment, 50% loan, or pay cash. So
So not like
so
here where it's
400,
like 3% down, you can get a house.
yeah. So that's something, and that, again, we can have another podcast on the property bubble, or whether, again, I'm not an economist, but if you just look at even local Chinese when they buy property are putting 30% down. So that's a lot different than 3%. So you have to have cash in order to get
Sure.
your loan, which you don't default quite as often on the loans. So
Very interesting. Which is what
yeah,
caused the
that's a whole other that's a whole
housing
other
crisis.
podcast.
Yeah. Let's see here.
Yeah.
Got some more comments coming in. Nitesh Malhotra from Boston. I think he'll be on the show tomorrow from Six Walls. Hey, Nitesh. Josh Rose actually points out that you also speak Canadian. Okay.
Thanks, Josh.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm trying to keep my Canadian accent down, but if you want, I can bring it out. I can bring it
Oot.
out.
Bring it out. Yeah, I love the comments, and I love. So what's funny is I get when I do these normally like around 3 or 4 o'clock in the afternoon Eastern
Yeah.
in the U.S. and I get the snarky comments from the British who have been having a couple pops, at the pub or whatever back when we didn't have to distance ourselves, and now I'm getting the snarky comments from the Americans. It's great. I love it. I love it. All right, here we go. Adam Rothschild, any advice? Okay, let's see here. Let's see here. You know what? Okay, this one's a good segue actually from our friend Josh. So he's switching it up with constructive comments. This is interesting. What's your outlook on the future of expat populations in China post COVID-19, Adam? What is your outlook on the future of
Uh,
expat populations in China?
yeah. It's hard to say. Uh, I mean, it's the localization of and locally hired foreigners, and localization of the expat community has been happening for a few years. So you know that one, Josh. Uh, Post COVID-19, I do expect there to be a bit of a bump as soon as China opens up. 3 weeks ago, China closed its doors to foreigners coming in. So right now, all the flights coming back, and it's limited flights, but are all mainland Chinese coming back. Obviously, they're not going to close the doors to local nationals, but foreigners can't come anymore. I don't know when that is going to stop. I have no
Well,
idea
so
when
you're saying there's
they.
going to be a bump. There's going to be a bump because that's pent up demand. That's due to the fact people haven't been
Yeah,
able to come over for three
yeah.
months. But is the, let's say, medium to long term, the 6 month to a year to 2 year outlook for expats being in China, is that rosy? I mean, are we going to see people who say, gosh, I mean, you know, COVID-19, another coronavirus could happen. It could pop up here, or I don't feel safe, or it's too far away, or I don't know. People are fickle. I mean, do you see that impacting the long-term prospects for expats in China?
I hope not. Thanks for asking me a hard question, Josh. Appreciate that. Honestly, it's too early to say what the effects of COVID-19 are, right? Prior to this, there were still projects moving forward. Obviously, the automotive industry in China isn't what it was previously in previous years. So automotive sales were down in 2019 before all of this. Now they're off a cliff, right?
Right.
So that's just something that it had been a changing dynamic already. So that dynamic hasn't changed on localization, on diverse population throughout China, not all based in Shanghai, having not all the expats based in New York and LA, but having projects in Houston and Delaware and I don't know, Spokane, like all just random cities, right? You're not just all based in the major centers. So that the diversity across China is something that had been trending for a few years, but I don't know what it's going to be like, and I don't think anybody knows because it's not over yet, right?
Yeah.
I think it would be this. Sorry, Ben. I think it would almost be the same as pollution. People aren't going to come because it's polluted, and people still came, and the pollution gets better every year. Fine. People came after 2008, after the financial crisis. People came after SARS in 2003. The global economy still needs to churn, and you'll still need experts abroad in different markets, whether it's Brazil or China or Russia or US or Canada.
So. Well, so you mentioned a few things, right? So you mentioned the pollution, but people still came, and you mentioned SARS, things like that. So that brings me to another point. I kind of talked about this earlier, and I'd love to hear you kind of go into it, right? So as an expat living in China from Canada, right, from North America, which I think a lot of our viewers are probably from, or the Western world, right? We'll say, which probably encompasses even more of our viewers. There's a lot of misperception. I say misperception. I assume they're misperceptions around China, around what it is to live in China. I mean, even out of this whole COVID-19 thing, I mean, people are talking about wet markets and all sorts of stuff like that, right? Like,
yeah, I heard that.
I mean, it's just what we hear, and just to be honest, right? So what are those misconceptions? What's true? What's false? What was the biggest eye opener for you? What do you hear all the time from expats coming in that you have to dispel, since you're the DSP and probably the first person they talk to, once they get there,
I mean, there's a lot of cultural elements. So it's a matter of understanding just understanding the 5,000 years of history, and all of that is wrapped into it of what is China. So not coming over here and being blind to culture or understanding of culture is a mistake, first off. But I mean, you mentioned the wet markets. I can't remember what news network was talking about wet markets are open in China again. A wet market is a farmer's market. So if you said the farmer's markets are open again, people are like, oh, farmer's markets. Well, I can go get my vegetables. Most wet markets are farmer's markets. Not every wet market. I've never been to a wet market that has exotic food, right? Like that. So and again, that's whether it came from that one market. And again, there's debates and studies, and I'm not going to say whether it did or did not come from that one wet market in Wuhan that was selling exotic meat. But those markets are not the common. So when the news has a video of a wet market in Shanghai, it's a farmer's market. It's fruit and vegetables.
Yeah, I mean, we got wild stuff over here. We got Joe Exotic running around with Tiger.
Exactly. You guys got the Tiger King.
Yeah, we got our own crazy stuff over here. So I mean, who are we to sit and judge and point fingers at other people's? I mean, you dig up the craziest thing you've seen in any country, and it'll probably blow your mind. So my little baby's getting out of the bath. But so that's number one. So the markets and the food and all that stuff is not as radical as we think it is over here, or as widespread. I mean, is that accurate? Is that fair?
Yeah. Again, it's the and it's the same thing with on the foreigner side of things. But 1% of the population doesn't make the population, right? I shouldn't say nobody eats dog. There's always Chinese people eat. No, it's like such a small portion of the population, 0.01% or whatever. But then from the outside, that country does that. The stereotypes come from a very small minority of the population, unfortunately. And it's the same with the US, like Chinese stereotypes of the US or Canada. It's not everybody. There's, the culture is a big part of it. And then there's the stereotype misconceptions that you kind of have to kind of break through a little bit. But most people, when they arrive, no matter what city, it's not what they expected China to be. It's very modern. The technology in China is way further advanced. Josh will probably comment on this. The amount of what you can do with your phone in China blows anything in the US away.
Really?
I don't carry
Give me an
cash.
example. Give me an example of something like that on a phone that would just be really super cool in advance for us over here.
So within Alipay or WeChat, actually we can talk about the tracking technology. That's something that's come up recently in the news as well. But you can book your flight tickets, you can transfer money, you can pay your bills, you can order, like everything is done within apps, and basically just two major apps. So there's no need to, it's just so convenient in China. I hate it when I travel abroad and I'm having to carry cash, and like no matter what you want ordered, when you want it, it's delivered. It's super, super efficient mobile technology in China. And that's just, again, looking at history and culture. China adopts technology advancements much faster than the West.
Well, I
It's
mean,
just
if you
things
look,
change so fast here.
that's what I was going to say. I mean, if you look at the advancements over the last, I mean, you could tell me better. I mean, 30 years, 40 years, when it just went from
Yep.
like this to like a hockey stick, right? I mean, how
Yep.
long has this recent, I don't know what you want to call it. I mean, this age that China's in right now, how long has this been going on over there?
I mean, China's been growing and changing and developing since early 80s, and it gets better every year, every year, every year. So you get used to change.
Mm-hmm.
So our generation and our parents' generation, besides technology, pretty much the same, right? Your kids' generation, you have a house, car. Again, taking technology away from it, but the standard of life is pretty much the same. Not in China. The generation gaps are smaller. And again, it's a whole other topic of history of China. You have to realize who you're talking to. If you're talking to somebody who's 60, 50, 40, or 30, their mindset and their history that they've had to deal with is just much different. Yeah.
Yeah. Interesting.
Um,
Go
yeah.
ahead. You go ahead.
No, I was going to say on the mobile thing, and Janet was asking me about this earlier. Another misconception is tracking, government, Big Brother type thing. But one of the things and it happened really quick, is there is within both of these apps, because both of these apps are registered to your bank, and your bank, you need your passport. And so like it's registered to you, right? So, and that's what you need for payments and whatnot. But they have I saw a feature on this on CNN with Anderson Cooper, not saying nice things about it, or rolling his eyes. But it's a QR code, so that square barcode thing. So basically, the app reads your phone that you've been in Shanghai for 2 weeks. If you have a green QR code, you're safe. If it's yellow, a little bit of danger, and red means you've been exposed. So if somebody in your building has a red QR code, then you're going to get your QR code that was green yesterday is going to change to red, and it means that you should isolate and see a doctor and get things under control.
Oh,
And
wow.
it's all on your phone. But to go anywhere in Shanghai, to go to a restaurant, to go to your office building, when I go to the office later, I have to walk up, show my green QR code, and I can't show you because I'm using the video on my phone right now. But basically, it's just click a few buttons, open an app, click, click, click. Green, walk in, they scan it, boom. So it's not government tracking for the sake of tracking. It's not, it's not a matter of the government's following you. It's a safety measure, and
Right. Well, and I
it's
think it's
keeping
all
things under control.
yeah, it's all in the way that it's used, right? And who's using it and how
Yeah.
are they using it? I mean, we are very accustomed in the United States, I'll say at least, and I think really worldwide, we are really accustomed to giving up our privacy in exchange for convenience. And we do it with our Facebook, and we do it with our Google, logins,
Hmm.
and the we do it all the time. We sign away our privacy left and right. But when it can be used to protect us from a pandemic, it's like, hey, that's a very, very good use case right there.
Yeah. Right now, Google and Apple are working together doing some phone tracking system. But I mean, it was a week into the pandemic, China had this developed, like a week or two into it. Right?
Wow.
It was quick. So I don't
Incredible.
know when Google and Apple are going to do it, but I'm sure they're deconstructing what China's already done.
We we have a couple of questions coming in here, and I want to get to these because they're very interesting. They're two kind of along the same vein here. Brian Rothschild says, any advice on if we should always wear masks in public or not if you have not tested positive for the virus? Do you have an
Mhm.
opinion? Now, I know you are not an epidemiologist. I know you're not.
Yeah,
I tried to get Sanjay Gupta on here. He was busy. Here's Adam.
yeah.
But Adam, I mean,
Next
from what,
best, second best.
yeah, so you were right up there. You and Fauci were like right here. Um, but do you have any advice or opinion that's coming out of China on if you should always wear masks in public or not if you have not tested positive for the virus?
China's 100% mask country. There's my mask. So you can get them in all sorts of colors.
Can I see that
I've
mask
tried to
again?
get a
Can I
bait.
see that?
Yeah,
It,
yeah, it's just a surgical. I don't
okay,
have the
nice.
N95 one. I just this is the surgical mask. I tried to
Okay.
get one that looked like Bane.
I thought that
Didn't
was the
happen.
Bane
So
mask. I thought that's what it
yeah,
was.
yeah, yeah. I've been searching for a Bane mask, but haven't found one yet. But um, masks. China's a mask culture, and when the pandemic hit, everyone's wearing a mask. It's not a law that you have to wear your mask, but you kind of look like a jerk if you're not wearing a mask.
Which is the opposite of how
And
it is here because when we're wearing a mask,
yeah,
we feel weird. We feel odd. We feel like people
yeah.
look at us like we're sick instead of looking at us like we're taking precautions.
But the thing is, something like this, and again, you don't know you're sick. That's the issue. Now, my logic on it is like this: a surgeon wears a mask not because they're worried about getting sick from the patient, because they're worried about getting the patient sick themselves. So to me, a mask is to stop things this way, not that's because there's air pockets. It's not going to
Right.
stop someone coughing in your face and the air comes. It's not that sealed. So it's not necessary. It's more of protect the community, the greater good. And, if you might not know you're sick, but you're protecting the environment or
Right.
your home. And so everybody wears masks. And when you get to a restaurant, of course, you take it off. Um, I work out of the WeWork ecosystem. So when you get to WeWork, when I get to the office, and if I'm in the common area or getting coffee or something, I'll put my mask on. But when I go work at my desk or in the meeting room, I'll take it off. Um, and of course, at home, I'm not going to wear it. But it's a cultural element. It's
Yeah.
I think it's the difference between a we culture and a me culture.
Wow.
Right. So
Interesting.
but whether it works or doesn't, and the science of does it make you touch your face less, or do you not clean your mask as much as you should, so you make yourself. I don't have an opinion. I'm not Fauci. I'm not Gupta. That, but to me, the simple thing is my logic is if I am sick, I'm not spreading it, and I'm not getting other people sick, and I'm healthy. I might not realize that I have the virus. So I think that is a simple
Well, and I
logic
think
to
that's a
follow.
change. That's a change for us mentally because I can say over here, it used to be we would tell people that were sick not to come to work. Don't get me sick. It was all about don't get me sick. Don't cough at me. Whatever. And now
Yeah.
it's much more about don't infect people who are high risk. Of course, now we're learning that a lot more people are high risk than we thought. Use
Mhm.
elderly people and people with pre-existing conditions, and now people who are 37 years old are dying. People who are 24 years old are dying. I mean, you can't even call it at this point. It's just basically, so it's been a little bit of a change of mindset for us. In fact, we have another question from Josh. Josh is really off brand here with these helpful questions. He says, "Will you be
It's typical.
providing will you be providing PPE for look-see trips?"
Most of the people coming in would already have that with them, right? And I haven't closed. So we had a few. So in February, everybody left, right? Everyone's like, that I'd say 80% of our assignees were gone. And then in March, everyone was trying to get back in because it was under control in China. And then eventually China closed the door. So we've had a few look-see trips of people that were able to before, I think it was March 29th or 28th or something, when no more expats in China. Everyone has, no one doesn't already have it.
Right.
We would basically, if we have a look-see trip in June, hey, do you have a mask? Are you coming from wherever you're coming from? Do you have masks? Okay, when you get to the airport, we'll have somebody with a mask for you. But I don't see anybody not already having their own masks, because you're
Yeah.
I don't see
Yeah,
that.
I mean, you just hand them like your mask. Hey, I got an extra. Here you go. It's like you just whip a handkerchief out. Like, here you go. Here's a used mask. Um, yeah, no, I imagine. Ryan is an EMT. He says he can answer that. At least for the U.S., China's a whole different beast. Um, I think he's saying yes. Wear your mask. I think that's where he's going with that. Hosea Botley, Raffle City, Chongqing. How do I say it? Raffle City,
Chongqing.
Chongqing. Raffle City in Chongqing is quite impressive. I think he Googled it. I think he actually wants to put an offer in on a place, so maybe you can help him with that.
Let's do it.
Yeah, there you go. Um, I wanted to ask you if there's anything else that people who are watching, who are interested in relocating to China, really need to know, before, or as part of making that decision. Or if people, RMCs and consultants, are watching this, and as they're maybe doing pre-decision counseling with people, are there things that you would like them to know to be able to inform people considering an assignment in China?
Another big one. For me, I think what makes the success of an assignment, obviously, is choosing the right partners. And I'm going to say Maxxelli is the best DSP in China. Choose me.
I've heard that. I've heard
Uh,
they work with most
yeah,
RMCs.
you have heard that. That's a true story. Um, no, the partnership is a big thing, and starting the process early, starting the education of the assignee, doing um, the initial calls, answering the questions, managing expectations. It's, there's a whole slew of things, and I still personally, I mean, I have 10 cities and coverage in 32 and staff, throughout China. I still do a lot of initial calls, because coming from an expat, just that empathy, and I can train my staff, and my staff are absolutely wonderful. Most of them have been with me for 4 or 5 years now. It's still different coming from me. The communication is always going to be stronger coming from an expat. So I'll still do a lot of the initial calls and manage expectations. And so it's choosing the right partner with the right systems and tools and processes to communicate and manage those expectations. I think the cultural element, a lot of companies were cutting cultural training, and we don't do formal cultural training. We do cultural training on the fly through life, I guess, right? Through the
Yeah.
experience and how to negotiate with a landlord, or how to give praise to a landlord to get what you want. So we do that as we go. But I think a lot of companies, I think that makes the assignment a lot stronger, is the understanding why. I mean, it's management. It's management 101. If you can get your staff to understand why, they'll buy into it. Well, if you can understand the why in China, why did my landlord do this? Why did that person say it like this? Or a lot, again, on culture and history. And but when you can understand the why, you're happier.
What about language? I mean,
So um,
the fact that they don't use a Cyrillic alphabet. It seems like a big language seems like a big mental barrier. If someone does not speak Chinese, should that prohibit them from considering an assignment, or how much of a detriment is that going to be to their experience?
it definitely helps to speak Chinese. You don't have to speak Chinese. Um, you know, Again, with apps and technology, you can communicate with your phone. You can, like, so it's not pre-iPhone, pre-2007. Yeah, it was a lot more difficult. You had to have a piece of paper with addresses and all that kind of stuff. So um, now it's fine. Like,
Yeah.
the Chinese helps, but it shouldn't be a barrier to coming.
Yeah. Makes sense.
Yeah. What I do tell the signees is when they arrive, start studying Chinese. Start day one, right? Don't, oh, I'm gonna do it in 3 months. Oh, I'm gonna start after Christmas. Oh, summer holidays coming up. I'll start after summer holidays. Because then all of a sudden you're here for 5 years and you haven't learned anything. So like the first thing that you do is day one, don't procrastinate, find a Chinese teacher and start if that's what you want, is start right away. And Chinese grammar is a lot more simple than English. There are roles, tables, and ways that you can form sentences, and it's a lot more process oriented, the Chinese grammar. If you could learn 365 words a year, and learning one word a day is not that. 5 words.
Okay. And last question here. Tell people about your podcast. I had the opportunity to listen to a couple episodes.
Mm-hmm.
Really smart.
Yeah.
Liked it. Tell people where they can find it and what it's all about.
Cool. So we're big on content. So part of it is we have our internal consulting division that we do market research externally for different companies. So we do market research internally. So if you go to our website, just search Maxxelli
and just repeat that again because you're breaking up a little bit there. I hope it's not me, selfishly. Let me know if you can hear it here if you're watching. Yeah, it was just breaking up a little bit on me. Let me know if you can hear it on LinkedIn or Facebook real quick. Maybe it's me. Not sure. Say that one more time though about how people can find it. So I want to make sure they catch
so
that.
Maxxelli, yeah, Maxxelli-consulting.com. And so yeah, we have a lot of great content. We have international city development guides, and so that's something that we've always done. We've always produced content, and I got into podcast a couple of years ago. I went to the ERC event in Singapore last March, and I went to the I can mention the RMC event I was at. So I was at a Grable event, and there was 15-20 minutes left. And so Bill went up on stage, Mr. Grable went up and just open mic, and just people asked him questions. I was just like, and so for me as an entrepreneur, and okay, little Adam and Big Bill, I was just like, oh my God, I was just like soaking up as much as I could. And so that kind of inspired me to create a podcast. So last summer I started recording season 1 called Mobility Connect. And, I interview, I call it the Mobility Army. So I just talking to all different people from families to RMCs to in schools, medical, just anything that has to do with mobility. And so season 1 was a bit of a learning curve. I'm sure this show for you the same thing. If I go back to the early shows, a lot
still
different.
learning.
Yeah.
But that's why I do it so often, so I
learn
learn faster that way, So anyway, yeah.
Yeah. So I had season 1 that's finished in December and 15 episodes, and I was planning to launch season 2 in February. Things kind of got derailed this year, and so I did a series called Inside Wuhan, interviewing different people, and there's so much information on the coronavirus, COVID-19 now. Every podcast is talking about it, so I kind of stopped my Inside Wuhan insights. So I'll probably launch season 2. I have a bunch recorded already, so I kind of have to decide when I launch season 2 and how not to let it get buried in all this over information.
Yeah, there's a lot of information, but there's also a lot of demand. It's an interesting time right now. Really quick, got some more comments here. Brian Rothschild says Adam Rothschild. I'm sorry if I called you by the wrong name, but you just look like an Adam. Josh Rose, we've got our own exotic. That's funny, Ben. Yeah, I like that one. I was inspired. Josh Rose, WeChat, the PayPal, WhatsApp, LinkedIn, Facebook, browser, Expedia app that every merchant, including the exotic web market, accepts. Josh, awesome. Aparecida Ferreira, thanks Ben and Adam. Josh Rose says huge cost reduction of mobile hardware and service in China allowed the population to leapfrog the personal computer for the most part, and the demand And the demand, far more innovation happens with 1 billion consumer market. Yeah, that's interesting, right? I mean, how many times,
Hmm.
so many consumers, probably so many entrepreneurs, so many nuances and micro categories to serve that can then launch into something greater. I just looked out the window. It's actually snowing here. What's the temp like there in Shanghai?
I don't know how to speak American, so I'm going to say 25 degrees Celsius.
That sounds
I
hot.
don't know what that is in fact. Yeah,
That's
yeah,
hot.
it's getting warm. Yeah, it's t-shirt
Yeah.
weather. Uh,
Yeah, I'm learning. I'm
the
learning now
evenings.
too. A British guy told me it was 20. He said that was warm. I talked to somebody in BC yesterday. She said it was 10. So I'm getting a feel. I'm getting a feel.
Yeah,
80s
yeah. So it still
maybe.
gets chill. It still gets chilly at night, but it's not hot and sweaty yet. So
Okay.
yeah.
Brian Rothschild, not to be confused with Adam, his twin, said I just bought 50 disposable masks for 5,000 yen, but glad to know it's necessary. Thanks for the advice. It's appreciated. Josh confirmed that the technical difficulties were on your side, which I appreciate. He heard it now. He's going to actually watch Tiger King right now. Apparently, we did not hold his attention. Priyamvada says, "What? This will be our last question." I say that. Let me see if somebody else came through with something amazing. Let's see here. Janet Turner looked it up. My super producer said it's 77 degrees. That is a lovely day out there in China. So yes, Priyamvada says, what safety measures are you taking for expats and for your own team who are coming back to work? Yeah, are there any additional safety measures? I mean, it sounds like you're a mass culture, but is there anything additional
Yeah.
that y'all are doing?
Um, so February 1st, I made a mandate that everybody works from home, 100% works from home. Um, Now that things are starting to open up again and kind of slowly venture back to the office, we just follow the trends of, we have hand sanitizer everywhere. So you go into a building, go into the office, you sanitize your hands. Masks are mandatory. Um, Again, we did look at sending masks to all of our offices, but I mean, our staff have boxes of masks and colors that they want and fit and style. What's the point of, hey, wear my mask, right? Like
Right.
everybody already has masks. So for the most part, it was the biggest thing that we did was February 1st. Is just like we mandated mandatory that everybody works from home. And yeah, people really haven't gone back to the office. It's my staff are throughout China, so I virtual manage already. So that hasn't changed. But for them, they're not going to the office and everybody's working from home. So I'm not sure how our office network will look once things get back to normal.
Well, yeah. I
Because we
mean,
can downsize a lot.
yeah. Do you think that you're going to have people back in the office? Are you going to do some sort of a hybrid model? And when do you think people will start coming back in?
Yeah. Um, Again, because everyone's gotten used to it, and we're still productive. But you still need offices for meetings, and we still have files. And I think, we'll probably cut because again, all of our offices are WeWork throughout China, so we'll probably cut our square meter, our floor space in half. So um, because people can work in the common area or just work from home. So we'll try and basically cut our office cost in half.
Yeah,
We
I
don't
think a
need
lot of people are
we don't
probably
need square
thinking.
meters.
Right. I think a lot of people
Yeah,
are probably thinking the same thing. And it'll be interesting to see the impact to commercial real estate.
yeah,
What I forecast, not forecast is probably a strong word. What I prognosticate is that, and I was talking to one of my RMC partners today, is that now that we are spending more time at home and assuming that more people are working from home, the trend had been, at least in this country, and I don't know what you're seeing, but the trend had been for people having less stuff, for moving less stuff, for living in smaller places, living downtown communities where there was a high walkability factor, and moving out of the suburbs into city centers. And now that I'm working from home, I have a fairly large home. Fortunately, I'm very blessed in that regard, but I have an office space. I have a basement where my kids can run around and be crazy. We have a big yard. They can go play soccer or whatever. And it's been very nice. And I'm wondering if, since we're going to be working from home more, do people put more emphasis on having larger homes again? Does the pendulum swing back the other direction and say, I want to have a
Hmm.
home gym, I want to have a home office, I want to have a playroom, things like that.
Hmm. Yeah, and you don't have to live central because you're not commuting anymore, or commuting less. Maybe you commute 1 day a week instead of every
Right,
week or every day. I'm
right.
not. I'm not sure. I mean, property size in China's different. Obviously, there's not that many Chinese have a villa, a house,
Hmm.
but the average expat, like managerial, working in the automotive or banking industry, they can get 200 square meters, 1800, or yeah, 1,800 square feet for an apartment, 3, 4 bedrooms, even if it's a couple, so they can have a spare room in an office. And
Yeah.
so you can still, even though it's an apartment, you can still have decent space. Uh, the average expat, again, obviously, if they're low level intern manager or whatever, then that they don't have as quite the budget. So
Right.
um, yeah.
I always like when people tell me I made a good point. On that note, I will end. Adam, thank you so much for taking time out of your early morning to be with us, and thank you for helping us
Hmm.
understand China a little bit better and sharing some of your
Hmm.
firsthand experiences through this COVID-19
Hmm.
crisis. Thank you so much. I really appreciate you being on with us.
Perfect. Thanks a lot, Ben.
Thank you.